Considering what happened in Happy Valley last week, considering the situation of the season, the scenario, the opponent, and the narrative above everything else, and considering what was at stake or what wasn't at stake, consider the performance of the Maize and Blue in demolishing Notre Dame 45-14 on Saturday night. Consider it the most impressive performance of the weekend in many ways. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, having taken in the Maize and Blue over Notre Dame 45-14, a game in which Michigan again dominated start to finish. I just took in every play and considered what the collective mindset of this Michigan football team must have been coming into this game. Please like, comment, share the videos, and subscribe. All right, consider this. Let's take it all in. This is a football team that was championship built or bust this year because of the Ohio State rivalry, because of being dominated by the Buckeyes, because of not winning the Big Ten since 2004, because of having the big name, high-priced head coach who is supposed to deliver a championship, because of all the talent on the roster, the high recruited rankings over the past 5 seasons under Harbaugh. It was supposed to be a championship season for Michigan, considering that they played at championship level most of 2018 before the huge, enormous letdown, because Urban Meyer is no longer in Columbus, because Dwayne Haskins has moved on to the NFL, because the game is in Ann Arbor. Michigan was, by all the various power indexes, the huge, enormous favorite to win the Big Ten this year. So consider Michigan was lucky to beat Army. They survived the Black Knights because of a missed field goal by a freshman field goal kicker who had never attempted a kick in college. They went to Wisconsin and were bloodied and battered and bruised and beaten down and dominated and throttled by the Badgers. That game was 35-0 at halftime. Completely embarrassed in a showdown at Madison. Then they come back last week in Happy Valley and they completely just show up uninspired, unprepared, and down 21-0. So did they collapse? Facing the whiteout, facing an undefeated football team, facing a team that seemed to be just on a roll, to have their number, just everything going against them. No, Michigan fought back. They fought back to within 28-21 and had the tying points in Ronnie Bell's hands, their most reliable wide receiver's hands, with 2 minutes left on a 4th down play in which Shea Patterson eluded trouble, made a really gutsy, heady play to get the ball to Ronnie Bell right in his most reliable receiver's hands to tie the game, to come all the way back from 3 touchdowns down, to tie it at Happy Valley, and Ronnie Bell dropped it. And Michigan lost 28-21. That valiant effort was wasted. Or maybe it wasn't. So, what would this football team do on the heels of being knocked out of the Big Ten race? Because consider, even though it's only 2 losses in the Big Ten, and many conferences are won by teams that have lost 2 conference games, Michigan lost directly against Penn State. Therefore, the Nittany Lions would have to lose 3 Big Ten games. They have lost 0 games. They would have to lose 3 Big Ten games for Michigan to win the Big Ten Eastern Division. They've been knocked out of the Big Ten race. They came into the season with Big Ten championship aspirations, goals, and a college football playoff appearance. We are only in week 9, and those goals are gone, out the door, and slipped through the hands of their most reliable receiver. Otherwise, 1 loss in the Big Ten, head-to-head win against Penn State, and they're still playing for something. So consider that even though it's Notre Dame in the big house, it's a national TV audience, Saturday night, ABC. It's one of the storied rivalries in college football. What did this game really mean for Michigan? Besides pride, besides showing that they have pride, that they could fight back, that they could bounce back, that they could actually beat a quality football team when it mattered. What did this game really count for? Tangibly, nothing. Tangibly, this game counted for nothing for Michigan. But they came out and they dominated. They showed us something. And considering the weight of the narrative, not just what's happened this season, but the weight of the narrative. Last Big Ten championship in 2004. Dismal record against ranked opponents, both home and away. Incredibly dismal performance and results and records against top 10 teams, in which Notre Dame was one coming into this game. Dismal records by all indications, having not won against the top 10 team on the road since 2006. And I saw one statistic, something like 2-20 against ranked teams during that span. 2-20 against top 10 teams during that span. So that narrative that we have failed again. Sure, we fought our hearts out, but we failed again. What could the confidence level have been of Michigan entering this game thinking if anything goes wrong, here we go again, against a Notre Dame team that was playing for a college football playoff appearance, that had one loss, but that one loss was very understandable, having to play in one of the most difficult environments in college football in Athens and only losing by one score to Georgia. Notre Dame was playing for everything. Michigan was playing for nothing, and Michigan came out and dominated. This is an even matchup in regards to talent, and Michigan just flat out physically dominated. They ran the ball the first 18 plays of the game. They ran the ball 25 of the first 28 plays of the game, and they moved the ball against a Notre Dame defensive front that is hailed as a top-notch line. One of the best lines in college football, and Michigan ran at will. This Michigan offense couldn't run the ball against anybody just a few weeks ago. The running game was dismal. They had one running back in Zach Charbonnet, and they gave him the ball in one particular game. I believe that was against Army. 33 times, and then had to throttle back from there, and had no experience at running back coming into this season. And the Michigan offensive line has been disappointing up until this Penn State game, and then they stepped it up even more start to finish against Notre Dame. The Michigan offensive line, let's give it credit, because they dominated the Notre Dame defensive front that, again, is much acclaimed. Left tackle John Runyon, a senior. Senior left guard Ben Bredesen. Center Cesar Ruiz, a junior. You had right guard Michael Onwenu, the junior, and right tackle Jalen Mayfield, sophomore. The Michigan offensive line, we will give them credit. The offensive linemen, we don't hear their names often enough. These guys dominated. Who carried the ball for Michigan? Well, Zach Charbonnet, who's been their top running back the entire season, the true freshman, 15 carries for 74 yards, and he found the end zone twice. But what about Hassan Haskins? Just the 49th rated running back in the nation, coming out of Missouri in the 2018 recruiting class. Haskins was moved to linebacker. And then Michigan so depleted by the early loss of Karan Higdon to the NFL, Chris Evans to suspension, and then just flat out lack of depth. Again, Zach Charbonnet being counted upon as a true freshman to carry the running back duties all by himself. So Haskins was asked to come back to offense and carry the football, and he has carried it lights out in recent weeks. After just 14 carries in the first 4 games, Hassan Haskins ripped up Illinois a couple weeks ago and may have saved the game for Michigan with 125 yards rushing. And then in this one against Notre Dame, 20 carries for $149 for Hassan Haskins. And that doesn't give his effort justice. You have to watch it. Watch him hurdle tacklers in the open field like Ronaldo Nehemiah, as Chris Fowler said. Hassan Haskins put on a show. Imagine being recruited as a running back, probably having your heart set on competing for a running back job at Michigan, being moved to linebacker, being buried at a position in which Michigan is loaded, and then having that second chance to come back to offense and get the football on a regular basis. Hassan Haskins is taking advantage. All right, the Michigan defense. Wow. Dominated from start to finish. Rushed Ian Book, who's a mobile quarterback. So when Ian Book would get rushed, he would look to do what he's done in the past, and that's find a lane to break containment and pick up those key first downs. And he couldn't do it. Michigan always closed the pocket on him and always had linebackers and safeties who would step up and fill those gaps and wouldn't let him get downfield for any meaningful, substantial yardage. Ian Book also looked dazed and confused and just had nowhere to go with the football most of the time and was just rushed so heavily that he couldn't find anyone. A 60-plus percentage passer hit on 8 of 25 throws. The Michigan rush defense was dominant. How many times am I going to say dominant? Notre Dame ran for 47 yards on 31 carries. Notre Dame's rushing attack. Again, NFL players across that offensive line, just like the defensive line. Notre Dame, 31 carries, 47 yards. And then Michigan's secondary play. I was most impressed with Michigan's secondary play against Iowa in watching every play of that game. After they were hit by KJ Hamler on a few plays, other than that, against Penn State, they played well. This Michigan secondary is first rate. And again, they took on Chase Claypool and the rest of the Notre Dame wide receivers and blanketed them. Claypool had to make 2 outstanding back shoulder catches to get anything in the box score. 2 catches for 42 yards for him. Michigan gave up 2 first downs in the first half. They only gave up 52 total yards in the first half. Notre Dame punted 7 consecutive times, and most of those were 3 and outs. Notre Dame finally got on the scoreboard with 5 minutes left in the third quarter, and the only reason Notre Dame was able to cap off that series with a touchdown was because of a awful, terrible, horrible phantom pass interference call against Michigan on a third down, so Notre Dame wouldn't even have scored that touchdown. And what did Michigan do? And so consider, Michigan dominated this game. Start to finish, there's 5 minutes left in the third quarter. Notre Dame gets a break on a phantom pass interference call, converts the touchdown, and now it's suddenly a 17-7 game. It's a game. Even though Michigan's dominated on the field, on the scoreboard, Notre Dame's back at it. They are back in play at 17-7. Michigan didn't think, oh man, we have dominated these guys, and now they're back in the game. They responded on offense. 8 plays, 75 yards, and a touchdown on the very next series. So for Michigan football, once again, it's 6-2 and 2 losses in the Big Ten. They are out of the championship race in the Big Ten because of the head-to-head loss to Penn State. They will be heavily favored the next 3 games against Maryland, Michigan State, and Indiana, and then they can make their season. Despite it not meaning a championship, they could rob Ohio State of a championship in the Big House. If they play like this, they've got a shot. They've got a legitimate shot if they play like this. And basically what Michigan is playing for is to beat their rival. They've beaten 1. They have 2 to go, and especially the game against Ohio State. And derailing an Ohio State season is what Michigan historically has loved to do more than anything besides winning its own championships, depriving Ohio State of championship aspirations and to get to a New Year's Six Bowl. That's basically the goal or tangible goal or aspiration objective for either one of these football teams is to make a New Year's Six Bowl game. Notre Dame is 5-2, Michigan 6-2. They can both finish in the 9-3 to 10-2 range and possibly get an invite as a major brand to a New Year's Six Bowl. Notre Dame is going to be substantially favored in its final 5 games against Virginia Tech, Duke, Navy, Boston College, and Stanford. They certainly could trip up against a number of those teams, but they will be a double-digit favorite in all those games to possibly finish at 10-2. But on this night, Notre Dame, with only one loss, going to the Big House, was playing for a college football playoff appearance, and they didn't show up. Michigan showed up, and it was 45-14, and it wasn't really even that close. My look at Michigan football and Notre Dame as we go down the stretch here in 2019 here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. For the best in discussion, debate, and analysis, please like, comment, share the videos, and subscribe. See you next time.